I was really looking forward to the second episode of Postcards from Buster because Chicago is one of the places I want to visit as soon as possible. And the episode was okay. There are a few things that I thought were maybe not the best choices. There were a few things that only made sense to me once I googled some things, and I will talk about those. But one thing I did love is that Arthur is in this. He's not with Buster, but we do get some animations of Arthur, and I didn't know that was going to happen. So I was really pleased about that. A Sense of Direction, Chicago, Illinois, focuses on Buster and a 10-year-old girl, a Muslim girl. Her religion is important, and she shows him various sites. But the only real Chicago thing in this is the Sears Tower, which I believe is now called the Willis Tower. Aside from the closing song, where we get a whole bunch of footage edited together in a montage, we never really got a proper look at Chicago, and I never really felt like I had a clear picture of what it was like. So I don't think this one's anywhere near as good as the first episode, where I really got a true sense of the environment they were trying to show us. Definitely not the case here. Farah, the little girl, takes Buster to her school. I have to say that must have been really awkward to film for Farah. I'm not sure if Farah is her real name, by the way. I don't know if they use the real children's names or not. If anybody knows that, please feel free to let me know. But it must have been really awkward going into like the school and having this cameraman or camera person following you around. It must have been. She didn't come across as awkward, but it must have felt quite weird. But it was quite nice to see this little snapshot of what her life was like, a school that's very different to any school I went to. We got to see inside this like dessert shop, which was quite interesting because Buster made the comparison between that and the Sugar Bowl, and I thought actually that was quite a fair comparison, so it was quite nice to see those two locations. Buster is also getting quite homesick, which is very early on in the second episode. Mostly he's just missing Arthur. There was a mystery surrounding why Arthur hadn't emailed him or got in touch with him. That just was pointless and really boring. It gave the show a reason to show Buster being homesick, but it really wasn't necessary. So that I thought was a really bad decision. We got to see a lot of the religious aspects of Farah's life. Um, and I realize I'm saying a lot here, I'm not entirely sure why. And on the one hand, I think, yeah, that's brilliant, let's have a look at other cultures and religions, but I got quite confused because I thought, oh, does that mean the predominant religion in Chicago are most people Muslims? And I googled it, and according to Wikipedia, as of today, 71% of religious people in Chicago are Christian. So I feel like it wasn't the best decision to focus on a religion that's not the predominant religion of that area. But at the same time, I dug a little bit deeper, and this focuses on an area called Loop, which is where the Willis Tower is. And actually, from what I can tell, the dominating religion there is actually Islam. So if they'd maybe made that a little bit clearer and given me context without making me go on to Google, I would have understood why that decision was made. I have to say, they filmed some of the religious practices, which I'm surprised they were allowed to do. It was really fascinating to watch from my perspective and very, educational. But also something else I don't agree with is when Buster asked Farah who Allah is, Farah replied something like Allah created everything, etc. And I don't agree that she should have been allowed to say that. She should have said Muslims believe that. Just as if the character had been Christian, I don't believe they should have said the Lord God created everything. They should have said Christians believe the Lord God created everything. Otherwise you start to indoctrinate the viewer, and that's never a good idea. So there are certainly things in this episode that I think were not good decisions, things that didn't work very well, things that feel like fluff or padding, and I don't feel like I visited Chicago, even a small pocket of it. The tumblers, however, well, the tumblers looked amazing. I won't say what the tumblers were, but it was great to watch them. But that lasted far too long. I definitely get the impression they did not have enough footage for this episode and had to pack in a lot of padding and extend clips as long as possible. And I just feel like they could have done so much more with this, and it could have been so much more interesting. But Hopefully this is not a flavour of what's to come. Hopefully this is just a one-off and the rest of the episodes are brilliant and I actually feel like I'm in that location. I did in the previous episode. I felt very immersed in that world. In this one I don't. It was chaotic and messy and it just didn't work very well at all. I did, however, learn that people in America may not know what cricket is. Especially maybe young children. Buster asked what's, well, having said that, Farah knew what cricket is, so I can't say that generalising statement. Buster didn't know what cricket was, so maybe not everybody in America does, and I find that to be very interesting. Being British, obviously I know what it is. So I did learn that. I learned some things, but generally it's a bit of a weak episode. Definitely nowhere near as good as the first one. Let's hope things going forward are a lot better.